Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of On the Paint Table. This is my weekly show where you see what I got done and what I'm working on and what is coming up. So for this week, I painted, 8, 13, 14 miniatures, most of which are really big. I don't think there's anything here smaller than a 40 mil base. It's been quite a busy week. I got a whole bunch of stuff built. I plowed through some projects for actually 4 different games. And recorded games for 1, 2, 3 of them this week. So it's been pretty eventful. First, of course, biggest of which was my Gatebreaker Gargant for the Sons of Baphomet, which is pretty exciting, big miniature. And I actually followed the painting guide for the contrast style that's in the Sons book. I was trying to get done to play a game on the weekend, and I just wanted to see how it would look. He's got lots of cool sort of like texture-y details and not a lot of like big, just expansive flat stuff. So it felt like it would be a good like candidate for the contrast paint method, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. It looks really good on camera, and I managed to get it done in probably like assembly probably took about an hour, and then maybe 2 2-hour painting sessions to get it finished. Just like one to get all the washes and contrast paints down, give them a good solid hour to dry, and then picking it back up. I think I went and like edited some videos and stuff like that. Another hour of like just picking out details and highlighting and stuff like that. And I'm really satisfied with him. Like, he looks great. He was super fun to play with my Night Haunts. I'm excited to give him a try with my Ogres and see how he does. Then I painted up the next 2 Perilous Dark mission monsters for Frostgrave 2nd edition. Picking back up Perilous Dark, I wanted to take a break in between fighting Regolith, as I've played, I think, 5 or 6 games now from the new rulebook. And just have packs and go off and have some adventures. So I painted up some Reaper minis, some models to be my white gorillas. So like they're like the gorillas living almost like Yetis, living up there in the city, the frozen city, and my matriarchs, my ice spider matriarchs, which are like bigger ice spiders. Just some classic Reaper minis. I ordered this stuff a long time ago, actually, back when Ontario went into lockdown, just because it was great stuff to have on hand for Silicon. I was just going to paint like a couple of things every week. And so I've been trying to clean up my dining room, which has unfortunately become like the repository of projects. And so this week was about like trying to get a whole bunch of packaging thrown out and miniatures assembled, using it as an excuse to do some stuff. And then I built and painted most of my first 2 fleets. I got some samples for Kings of War Armada, my dwarf ships, and some of my Basilian ships, which I'm pretty stoked for. And then last but not least, I got the Malvin and Mayhem boss expansion for Riot Quest, and I painted them up. I'm so excited about this. This is kind of like, if you ever played Borderlands, those like big boss showdowns in an arena where you get locked in with some kind of super monster, Malvin Mayhem is that. It's a gobber who's put together a warjack, and you can use him as a hero. So like just like all the expansions right now for Riot Quest, you can use him in your standard Riot Quest games, or he's got a boss mode to fight against, and you'll see that video coming up soon. I'm really excited about it. I'm going to try it on the new Temple of Cirrus mat, because that feels like a good like boss location. I also painted up Helga on wheels. I think the biggest Riot Quest miniature so far, and it's funny because neither Mike nor I painted her because she's kind of an imposing miniature, and I had a lot of fun doing it, and Destructron 3000. And then I got a bunch of stuff coming up, so let's take a look at what's done. And so once again, people asked last week for me to do this in iPhone vision, try and give you guys the best possible view of my models, and you liked it last time, so we'll do it again. And this is my Gatebreaker Gargant. So you can see here, he was done up with the contrast method using the step-by-step in the rulebook, the battle tome rather. And the skin was done, so I started this thing a whole thing off with some Gray Seer primer, and then I did all of the big sort of flat expanses of color first, starting with the lightest color. So I painted on Guilliman Flesh, and I think the recipe is 1/3 Guilliman Flesh, 1/3 water, 1/3 contrast medium. And when that was dry brushed that with Pallid Witch Flesh. And that's literally all I've done here. And because the model is like so nicely sort of textured and stuff, it just picked out all the high sort of like areas with like a really light dry brush. Now I will say I used the greatest of all dry brushes, which is the old Citadel. I think it's called the tank brush. It's just the old flat round Citadel brush. I use that for my dry brushing, and I do a really thorough job of drying it off. So that's why I've got like a subtle pattern there on the foot and on like the knees. And a lot of people kind of eschew dry brushing, but if you do it properly, like if you look at some of like the military painting guides and stuff like that for like tank kits and stuff, or some of those like high-end like modeling magazines like from Japan, the things you can do with dry brushing are pretty insane when you get good at it. And those 2 color combinations, I didn't have to do a lot of work. I just kind of picked everything out and gave it that nice kind of like mottled, pale, pallid skin look. I used Basilicanum Gray on the stone here for this big swinging piece of masonry. And then Lead Belcher for all the metallics. This sort of like raggedy cloth is literally just Black Templar. And I think I gave it a super light fine dry brush when it was all dry with, what is it, Storm Fur, maybe? I think that's the one. Or maybe Eshin Gray. I used Wildwood on all the other straps, and then Skeleton Horde on all the wood. And then went back after it was all sort of said and done dry. Oh, and Agros Dunes on like the little leathery straps, and I don't remember. I think it was just Agros Dunes on that stuff. Yeah. I used Rune Lord Brass on all the sort of like clocks and stuff. And then the humans again were done with just I used the Fire Slayer flesh for them, just to give them a lighter flesh tone to have it contrast. Get it? Contrast with the contrast paints. The toenails, sorry, were all done with the gross dunes and stuff too, and so were the teeth. And then once all like the big colors were dry, I went back and did the dry brushing and then just picked the details. So just going on with some Screaming Skull, getting all the edges of the wood there. I blended some Gorthor Brown into the Wildwood and just did the edges of the leather, just some gold on all the metallics, or some silver on all the silver edging, and used some neon oil, I think, and that new, oh shoot, what's it called? The new Cryptek gloss color on the metallics here, just to give it that kind of like nice rusty look. And then my basing is done with huge minis. I think it's called Basalt. It's like the black, like really dark gel medium with sand in it, and dry brushed with Eshin Gray, Storm Vermin, and then a bit of Screaming Skull mixed in. And then those are all tufts from Army Painter. I think they are the Highland tufts and the Glacier Frozen Waste tufts. And he's all done. Really happy with him. Sorry, that's P3 Eldritch in the glowy bits and lanterns and stuff. And of course, I went and highlighted all the skulls and the teeth and rocks and bits and pieces that he's got on him as well. Yeah, I'm really happy with him. He's super fun in the game. Here's my stuff done up for Frostgrave. So I did the same contrast paint jobby stuff on the white gorillas there. I can't remember what the code is for these minis, but I primed them with Gray Seer. I washed them with Skeleton Horde. The skin I did with Ultramarine. And then I went back and just highlighted it all with some dry brushing. I think I dry brushed Pallid Witch Flesh for the fur, and then Thunderhawk Blue to highlight the skin and stuff, and then just blending in beiges and bits and pieces. It's XV88 on the bones, and then it's blended up through Screaming Skull. The matriarchs are just Reaper Giant Spiders, and I did them with, what is it, Coal Black. P3 Coal Black over some black primer, just blended up a little bit of Coal Black mixed with, what is it, like Bleach Bone or Screaming Skull or something like that to get the edges nice and bright. And then I washed all the recesses and stuff with Neon Gloss and threw a little red and stuff on there. Sorry, he's having a hard time focusing. The one thing with that iPhone is if there's too many minis on, they have a hard time focusing. And they're ready to rock and roll for some Frostgrave games. And then this was all my ships for Armada. The Dwarf Fleet here done airbrushed with, I think Lead Belcher, and then given like a dry brush with some lighter silvers, the edges all done with Rune Lord Brass, everything washed with some Neon Gloss. XV88 for all the wood on the Basilean ships. They were done from contrast though, so a contrast primer, and then I used the contrast Screaming Skull for the sails and just blend them up through Pallid Flesh or Pallid Witch Flesh. I used like some like greens for the windows there, and blues for the windows in the dwarf ships, and they're super fun to paint. They're all resin, so I had to make sure I cleaned them really well. And you'll see there's one more that I had to get painted that I haven't quite done because it's pretty big and daunting. But I'm stoked to give the game a try. I've got the sort of like the manuscript for the test rules right now that I'm gonna give a read over. I gotta cut out and stick on some tokens because I had a whole bunch of like adhesive tokens to like make my own token set, but I'm excited to give it a try. And here's my new Riot Quest stuff. We got Marvin and Mayhem, the boss fight. So you can see here Marvin and Mayhem. It's a giant robot with a gobble riding it. I mean, what could be better? I love his like little frowny eyebrow too. He looks like the dude from Day of the Tentacle, if we remember that. This is all airbrushed. Actually, all three of these are funnily enough airbrushed from the same color, but then just treated with different washings and weathering powders to make them look a little bit different. So all three are from, I think it's Granite Steel through my airbrush. And then this one's been washed with that Cryptek Brown, and then a little bit of Neon Oil, a little bit of like Agrax. Once it was all base coated, and then I had pretty much the same thing, except I didn't cut it. I cut a bit of contrast medium into the Agrax or the gloss on Marvin and Mayhem. I didn't cut it onto Helgon wheels. I love her. I love that she's got a little I Love Carver on the back here. And yeah, so once they're airbrushed, I just went and picked through details and then threw some washes on them and highlighted them up. I love Helgon wheels. She's such a cool model. Her giant like motorcycle. Riding a hog. She's so cool. I might still go back and put a little blood spotter on her mace. I feel like it needs a little bit extra detail there just to make her a little more stabby. And the easiest paint job of all was Destructitron, because he was washed with was it no gloss, but then I threw in some Azerman blue, old Azerman blue, and then cut it with a bit of medium to thin it down. That's how I got that nice gray. I actually was testing it out because I want to do my Granite Army at some point when the new Codex Rhythm comes out, and I wanted to see how it would look, and I was really happy with it. It gives that like blued steel look, and preserves some of that like bluish tint to the steel, the granite steel, which I'm pretty stoked about. So it's cool because all three of these came from different base tones, but you can see here just through the application of washes, like that's really what a wash is. A wash is like putting a colored lens of glass over top of whatever's underneath it, right? So you can really change the way that the overall miniature looks, just through like sort of judicious application of washes. And I am pumped for the solo like boss fight thing. So I'm going to definitely feature Destructron and Helgon wheels in that boss fight, and we'll try taking on Melvin and Mayhem. You'll see that in a couple. There's some stuff coming up. Obviously, my my quest to get like all the packaging out of my dining room. I stripped everything out of the packaging and put it all together, with the exception of this one. And it wasn't because I didn't have time. I ran out of will. The 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse are 4 separate miniatures on a big base, and I have to do them separately. So, like, I'm stoked about them, but at the same time, they are going to be, like, I didn't want to have loose miniatures lying around, so I'm going to do them all separately. And they're, like, they need to be glued on afterwards. They weren't something I could just build and throw into a carrying case while I was getting ready to paint. I got Flugwood, I got Chuck Dogwood, Attorney at Law, I got the Terrorizer, and then Weird Wendell are my last 4 heroes, like, literally, I think, along with the 4 Horsemen. For all the Season 1 stuff for Riot Quest, I've got it all painted. I'm pumped to get it done. And, like, whenever, like, an expansion comes out, like the boss fight one, it, like, re-energizes doing this. And then I just got the new mat, too, the Temporal of Sirius mat, which is so cool. You'll see it next week, actually. It's, like, in multi-levels and stuff, and there's, like, kind of snakes and ladders thing you play with it. And so that's like, re-energized me and Mike to play the game. Because every time I get a new mat, it, like, changes the way that you play Riot Quest. Riot Quest is easily one of my favorite games from 2020, so I'm pumped to play more of it, especially when there's like a co-op and single-player mode. I want to get the rest of the accessories done. So finishing off my chests probably next week. I'm going to try and get these 4 heroes done, and I'm going to save this nightmare of tiny little dudes for like my last thing that I do. But yeah, that'll be me like being completely done with painting the first season Riot Quest. My Marcher World stuff for Warcaster, hopefully I have like some of the actual assets, like the tokens and the rulebook and stuff, in-house soon, so we can play like a follow-up game to the first one. We got like some minor problems with the Let's Play that we've ironed out now, like just the way armor works. In most cases it didn't really matter because we were hitting 1 and 2 in models and they were just dying anyway. But the damage allocation we were slightly off by, and I'm stoked to give it a new army. So I got a Dusk Wolf, a Weaver, a Hunter, and a Squatty unit for the brown coats here, the Marcher Worlds that are sort of like the free peoples of this game, and that'll give me some more options to play against Mike's army, and I'll try and do some more stuff for my Iron Star Alliance as well. Put together my extra Night Haunts that I got in the Crypt Hunters box, because I did the Let's Play with my painted ones already, because I mean I already had the 10 Chain Rasp paint. I didn't need to bother painting them. I just painted up the Hunters themselves. But having played a game with them recently, I forgot how much I love that army, and I want to do more with the Death stuff, so I'm going to try and pad out, I'm going to paint these next 10 to pad my unit of Chain Rasps to 30, which is a good size unit, and I'll probably go and either see if I can grab, I need 6 more of the, whatchamacallits, the blade, the scythe guys, the battle line guys who have scythes, because you don't get enough in the star set to play with them, but I have 4 painted from playing Warcry, and so I want to finish that unit off too, so I'm going to battle line choice, and maybe paint some new HQs and stuff too, just get some more things to try.
So you go on the paint table, done it on the books, another 14 miniatures painted. I'm excited to try out some new games with Kings of War Armada. I was super pumped to finish that giant and get some games in it with it as well, and you saw it this week. And I'm really excited for more Riot Quest because I love this new game mode, and I'm excited for a boss fight. So we'll see you for that in the future. Till then, I'm Ash. Have a good night. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you want to support the channel, of course, like and subscribe and hit the little bell below so you get notifications when I post future content. I do post stuff 7 days a week. If you want to support the channel further, you can, of course, buy a t-shirt through Spreadshirts, buy a measuring gauge or objective markers from Death Ray Designs, or, of course, most importantly, there is Patreon. Patreon is what makes all this possible, keeps the lights on, pays for the studio costs, pays for the equipment, model costs, and everything else, and most importantly, puts food in my kids' bellies and a roof over their heads. Big thanks to everyone, past, future, who supported me. I do this stuff because of you guys, and of course, I will continue doing it as long as I can.